So we're going to do a sample exam together, what's called the sample paper. This is a emulation essentially, or simulation of your certification exam. There are 40 questions, just like there will be on the certification exam, 40 multiple choice questions of which you need to get 26 correct. So you can practice with this exam, and once you're able to get, I would say, most of them correct, without looking things up, I would say that you're ready. In the meantime, while you're practicing, you might need to look things up. And certainly during the exam, you're allowed to look up your class notes. So don't worry too much about it, but definitely you want to be prepared. So the exam is accredited by PeopleCert and the DevOps Institute. The One World Training is offering this course, as we talked about before. Fill up your 60 minutes allowed. Let's get into it. So question 1 out of 40 out of the sample exam, which of the following is the best definition of SRE? And again, I remind you, just as a hints for doing well on the exam, be very careful to read the question. So there may be, when it says best, that means there may be multiple acceptable answers. You're looking for the best one in your judgment, and in particular, the one that the course materials had identified as the best, or the primary definition, or whatever the question is. So I'll read through the questions, and then I'll help you, understand what the right answer is and why. A, what happens when a software engineer is tasked with doing operations? So there is some merit in that. Certainly SRE has to do with engineering. It doesn't have to be a software engineer, though. You don't have to be an accredited software engineer, but certainly software engineers can do it. So it's not a wrong answer. And definitely applying engineering practices to operations is a lot about SRE. So A is definitely a candidate answer. B, a discipline that incorporates aspects of software engineering and applies them to infrastructure and operations problems. So that's a better answer, and that's literally the definition that was on one of the early slides in the course in module 1. So B is most likely the answer, but let's keep going. A role that handles post-production operational work, such as managing SLOs and air budgets. Yeah, that's also possible, although the wording is a little odd. Post-production presumably means, literally it would mean after production. Well, it's really practices in production, but I think that was meant to mean that, during production. Yes. And handling SLOs and air budgets is not, as strong as applying engineering approaches. The SRE practice is stronger than that. So B is a better answer. C is not a wrong answer. So D, a discipline that incorporates aspects of software engineering and applies them to post-production management of services. Very similar to C, and for the same reason, I would say it's not a wrong answer, but it's not as good as B, and B was literally right off of the chart. So let's say B is the answer, and you'll notice that the correct answers are provided on the next chart. Actually, we're doing this in PowerPoint, so when you move ahead the slide, it highlights the correct answer. Okay, question 2. Which of the following is not a pillar of DevOps according to Google? And this is going back all the way to, again, module 1, where we were talking about how Google defines SRE in relation to DevOps. You may recall the videos with Liz and Seth, and there were several pillars of success that they identified. Reducing organization silos was, in fact, a pillar. Accepting failure as normal was also. Implementing gradual changes is a pillar. So the first 3 are definitely pillars. The last one, increasing flow from right to left. Okay, this is a trick question, kind of. You may recall, DevOps in particular is about increasing flow from left to right, from requirements through to, well, basically from coding to deployment. So be very careful when you read these questions. So D is the best answer for that question. All right, sorry, yeah, D is the best answer because it's a negative. It's one of the ones that is not. Okay. Question 3, what are services managed to in site reliability engineering? Well, you want to manage to your objectives, right? So SLOs is actually, the correct answer, but let's check out these others in case there's a better one. I can't see what it could be. SLIs are more of an indication of whether or not you're meeting your SLOs. So you may use that in managing SLOs, but it's not that you're managing to those. You're managing with them, perhaps. So again, wording is important. Air budget, same kind of thing as SLIs. You're not managing to air budgets, you're managing to your objectives, but air budgets are part of doing that. And service level agreements, yeah, so this is a little bit more tricky because usually SLOs are in service, if you like, or to support SLAs. So once you set up SLOs, you're managing to the SLOs, even though what you're really trying to do is make sure you don't breach your SLAs. So that's a little bit more tricky. You really need to know what the slide says and the whole point of SLOs. This is what you're managing to internally within the SRE practice. Ultimately, you're trying to make sure you meet your SLAs, but in terms of SRE managing to, it's SLOs. Okay, cost of failure can be reduced by what? Cost of failures. Improving the mean time to repair. Well, that's true because if you can do things faster, it's going to cost less. Making smaller changes. That's usually true as well. If you make smaller changes, it's going to be easier to detect and recover from them than large changes. The so-called big bang or changes are more costly if there's a failure. Canary deployments. This is the idea of carefully doing progressive releases. So rather than waiting until you have a problem in your entire production environment, you slowly introduce and be very cautious so that you can back out if need be quickly. So A, B, and C are correct answers. So therefore, D, all of the above, is the best answer. Okay. Which of the following is the most widely tracked? I've never really liked this phraseology. It really should say what's the most popular type of SLO tracked, I think they're saying in terms of surveys. Change failure rate is popular, but it's not the most popular. It's something that is certainly something you want to watch and people use. Security, wow, I mean, there's so many dimensions to security. And that is indeed, popular to track security. But is it the most widely tracked in the SRE practice? Because all of this implies we're talking about SRE. Probably not. Availability, definitely, we've spoken about many times. Availability is the most popular kind of SLO because if things aren't available, all the rest of it doesn't really matter very much. And finally, capacity. So capacity also can be tracked, but it's not as popular as availability. So C is the best answer. According to the Catchpoint survey, what is the definition of latency? Again, this is something that you may have an SLO for. Latency is, okay, delays associated with downtime. It's not really, not really. It's not just delays with downtime. It's more about, the time between an event and, the realization of the completion of the event. So B is a better answer in that regard. The time it takes from when a user makes a request until they receive a response. So that could be a human user. It even could be a process type client that's automating things. But in general, that's almost the definition of latency. So B is definitely a good answer. The difference between an SLO and the air budget, that's between an SLO and the air budget. That's not a particularly wise question because SLOs and air budgets go hand in hand. But still, it's not the answer to that question. D, the delay incurred in sending a message. You could almost interpret that, but Again, be careful about the wording. A delay incurred in sending a message could be, time it takes to even get the message out, let alone when it gets a response. So D is definitely not the best answer. B is the best answer. The inconsistency comes in the fact that there's a difference between latency and response time. So both, response time is the time it takes between a user request and they receive, but latency is kind of the time it's on the actual wire. So maybe that's how they're interpreting D, but a delay incurred in sending a message could be even before it hits the wire. So I don't think D is the best answer. Let's go with B. Okay, let's keep moving. Sample exam question 7. A team has a monthly service level objective of 99.9%. How much time is allocated for their air budget? So as we know from the course, the air budget is 100% minus the SLO. So 0.1% is how many minutes? 0.1% again is for a month. If you do the math, 0.1% of a month, if you count up all the seconds and minutes, it's 43 minutes. So B is the best answer. That's one that you should just remember because it's popular. You could calculate it if you wanted to, but that would take a lot of time during the exam. What does the T represent in the SLO valet model? Now, you may recall this is the Home Depot example. So T had to do with tickets, not traffic. It was the last of the 5 SLOs. There was a mention of traffic, which was part of B, but the correct answer is tickets. So that's one you just have to remember. Okay, a travel website used by millions of customers experiences a 1-hour outage, which exceeds the agreed air budget. What could be the possible impact on the business? Failure of related applications? Yeah, it's possible. But that's not necessarily a business impact. So again, be careful how you read these questions. Employee distractions? Indirectly, I suppose. Missed service level indicators? Maybe, you don't know, but because we don't know what the SLOs and air budget actually was, but the indicator itself is probably working. Social media backlash. So this is the one that is most correlated to business impact because social media impacts immediately, reputation and concern. So an outage can have the slides we're talking about that reputation. So D is the best answer. Okay, 10, the air budget should be burned to 0 every month. Okay, this was one where we were talking about how sometimes these things are counterintuitive. It sounds like, hey, why would you want to reduce your air budget? But the answer is actually true. The reason is it is a budget and you're allowed to spend it. You don't want to go beyond 0, so you got to be careful. But if you've got a budget, use it and work on other things rather than trying to, beat your air budget. That would be considered a waste of time. If you, let's say it was a financial budget and you're allocated $10 and you only spend $5, in many businesses that would be considered a bad thing because there was a reason why $10 was allocated. It's the same sort of thing with air budgets. Use work according to the budget. That's why you're managing to the SLO. Yeah, that's true.